Hello my dears, welcome back to another video. So you might not remember, but a while back when I did my what determines our attractions video, I did make a little brief statement. I made a passing comment on there saying that maybe in the future I'll do a video discussing why I think there's been a massive rise in young people identifying as LGBT+. So I was gonna do a deep dive on it, but then I thought, let me just do a reaction, because then through that I can actually show you what I'm talking about. But before we get into that, I want to spread the word, okay? I've recently made a new discovery. I am someone who has really cold feet. This is not a sponsorship. I'm not leading into a sponsorship or anything like that. But I recently discovered sock slippers. I didn't know about these. I didn't know this was a thing, okay? I'm late to the party. Maybe people already knew about this. Maybe I'm 10 years late. I have no idea. I was just out and about running some errands and I discovered slipper socks. And my life has just been changed. I'm so happy. I can't express to you. It's the little things, it's the little things. So I just feel like now that I have a bit of a platform, it's my responsibility to raise awareness to the cold feet community. You don't have to have cold feet anymore, okay? There are things out there to help us. But anyways, what was this video supposed to be about? Oh yeah, people identifying as LGBT. So one of my theories as to why we've got a large number of young people in particular, it is a very specific generation who are now identifying a lot as LGBT. Now, some people have said this is obviously because society is a lot more open-minded now, society is a lot more tolerant, and so people feel more comfortable to identify as what they are, etc. And I do agree that there's truth to that, 100%. Back in the day when people were doing things like gay conversion therapies and people being potentially arrested or prosecuted for their sexuality, there definitely was a lot of incentives to not be open about it. And now that those things have been removed from Western cultures and Western societies, it has made it possible for people to be more open about these things. And so that definitely has been the case. However, the sudden spike that's been happening in the last few years is very unprecedented, and it doesn't really make sense because we've been tolerant of same-sex couples for a while now, but this sudden spike that's happening among young people is kind of out of nowhere. And I think the reason for that, I'm going to show you with these videos, but one of the biggest reasons I think that's contributing to that, part of it is social contagion. I do think that people are seeing things on social media, which is making them think that they are something else. So it's making them think that they are part of the LGBT community, etc. Because what I'm noticing is that sexuality is becoming way more broad than it ever has been. So before, when people used to identify sexuality purely through the lens of biology, we only had three sexualities. You could only be straight, gay, or bisexual, because there's only male and female. So you could only be attracted to one, the other, or both. When we looked at sexualities through a biological lens, there was less options. Whereas now what I've noticed is that sexualities are no longer based on biology anymore. Sexualities are based on a ton of other things. And so I'm going to show you what I'm talking about, and then we'll dive into it a bit more.
Yes, I consider myself a sapiosexual. It means sexual attraction to intelligence. So the more intelligent a person is, the more I'm turned on. It's not gender-based, and it doesn't trump the fact that I'm gay. So it doesn't make me sapiosexual not gay. It makes me a gay sapiosexual. And I have been around many women where they're highly intelligent, and I'm turned on, and I'm thinking about what might be able to happen between me and that woman. I stutter because it's not really something, it's not my orientation, but it still is there. And this is also why I talk about fluidity and how people are able to get in bed with somebody of a different gender that they don't normally do, because they might be a sapiosexual, highly attracted and aroused and turned on by the intelligence. And from there, they're able to do what they want to do in the bedroom with this person. And smarts is what turns them on.
He says within the video, it doesn't erase the fact that he's gay, but he is also sapiosexual and has an attraction to people who are intelligent. So it's really fascinating, because it seems like what's happened as well is that because we've changed how we define sexualities, it's also meant that some people have almost dual sexualities. So they technically have more than one. But this is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about, is that sexuality, because we're no longer defining it through a biological lens anymore, we're defining it through social factors. The problem with that is that there are limitless social factors. So if we start defining sexualities through social factors, we will inevitably have endless amounts of sexualities. Because before, his attraction would have just simply been understood as a gay man who finds intelligence very attractive. Just like you can be a straight person who finds people who are very athletic very attractive. You can find people who are very ambitious very attractive. You can find people who are very, kind and funny very attractive. It doesn't create a new sexuality, though.
One of the most controversial and misunderstood sexual orientations is demisexuality. So let's talk about what demisexuality is and why it's not just a preference. People who are demisexual only experience sexual attraction once they've formed a close bond to someone. Now, upon hearing this definition, a lot of people think, that's normal. So many people don't sleep with a person they've just met. Well, yes, but these people are completely misunderstanding what demisexual is. Sure, lots of people are going to want to be close with someone before they have sex with them, but they still experience sexual attraction. They are still attracted to that person and lots of other people despite not having sex with them. Demisexuals do not experience this. They are completely asexual. They do not experience sexual attraction at all until they form a close bond with someone, and then they start to develop attraction for just that person. That's why asexuality is a spectrum and demisexuality is totally valid.
It's funny because demisexual is one that I'm familiar with. I learned this term years ago on a BuzzFeed video, and I actually had a conversation about this with a friend because they were trying to convince me that I'm a demisexual because I fit the description of a demisexual to a T, but my response was, no, that's just my personality. Because I personally think that demisexuality, I don't think that it's a coincidence either, that the vast majority of the people I've seen who say that they're demisexual are female. I don't think that's a coincidence. Because when you understand female sexuality, it makes sense as to why the vast majority of people who identify as demisexuals are female. Demisexuality is the idea that you cannot be sexually aroused by someone who you don't have a connection with. Yeah. That's a lot of people. And it's normal. The thing is, I don't have an issue with people creating words to describe things. I actually don't mind these terms like sapiosexual, demisexual. But I do have issues with claiming that they're sexualities. And I will get to why I have an issue with it at the end of the video. I have nothing against people creating labels to describe things that they're feeling or describe the way that they are. But I do think that when it comes to sexuality, I do think it can cause problems, particularly for young people. But yeah, I think demisexuality is perfectly normal, very, very common among women, also common among men too. But it does seem, from what I've seen, it's predominantly women who identify as demisexual. And I think it just comes down to the fact that, yes, women do prefer to have emotional bonds with the people they're sleeping with. And that's perfectly normal. That is textbook female sexuality. That's typically how females are. So it's not out of the ordinary at all.
Growing up asexual means spending the first 15, 20 years of your life not realizing that when someone says someone is hot, they mean they're sexually attracted to them and not just aesthetic attraction. Because I'd be like, wow, that person's hot, and I really just meant, wow, my eyes, they make my brain happy to see them. I like how they're dressed, I like how their hair is. No, that's not what people mean. It means hot means you make you feel things or you're sexually attracted to them. What?
Again, completely normal. It is. I call people hot, but I don't want to sleep with them. And it's kind of just like slang, isn't it? That's just how you talk. If you think someone's attractive, just like, oh, that person's really hot. That person's really hot. I don't want to sleep with any of these people. I just acknowledge the fact that they're beautiful people to look at. So far, I'm learning that I'm a sapiosexual because I am very attracted to intelligence. I'm also a demisexual because I don't personally like the idea of having intimate moments with someone outside of a committed relationship. And I'm also asexual because I can say that people are hot without it meaning I want to sleep with them. I'm collecting sexualities like Pokemon at this point because I can relate to all of these.
It's that time again! Let's build a house based off the Omnisexual pride flag. A lot of you have been asking for this one, and I've actually been looking forward to talking about this one. Let's get into this. Omnisexual, often confused with bi, is a sexuality which means that a person has attraction to all genders, while still having a preference. This pretty much means that they like every gender identity, but have a preference on certain ones. In other words, omnisexuals are attracted to all genders, but not regardless of gender. Gender can still be a factor in their attraction, unlike pansexuals who don't care about gender.
So omnisexual is the attraction to all genders. but with a preference. Based on how it was described in this video, it seems as though omnisexual takes into account gender identities as well. But do you see what I mean though? In that, I think the reason why there's so many different sexualities now is because we are now defining sexualities through social terms. Sexuality labels are no longer biological. They're defined by social factors. But the problem is there are so many social factors. So inevitably, you are going to have an infinite number of sexualities. Because if people can make sexualities based on preferring intelligence, preferring to have a bond with someone before they sleep with them, being able to acknowledge the attractiveness of other people without being sexually attracted to them, which are completely normal human behaviors. There is nothing abnormal about any of these. These are completely normal and very common human behaviors. It's just the only difference is people are now giving them labels. But the reason why I think this can be confusing is because when you say that these are sexualities as opposed to labels to describe different character traits, because really and truly a lot of these are personality traits, right? Before we would have understood these as personality traits. You have a specific type of personality, and because of your personality you prefer these types of people. But we would not have understood them as sexualities because we looked at sexuality through biological lens, which is, are you same-sex attracted, opposite-sex attracted, or attracted to both sexes? So we only had 3 sexualities. And the thing is, even then, when we only had straight, gay, and bi, people were still confused about which one they fit into. I remember young people really going through a lot of distress trying to figure out their sexuality and trying to figure out what they are. I cannot imagine how young people are navigating figuring out who they are today when there's this many options, especially when there's so much overlap with all of the options as well. Like the first guy who was on, who said that he was both gay and sapiosexual. So 2 sexualities, so people can have multiple. I just think it's confusing personally. I don't think people do better with this much choice. I think it creates a lot of confusion because I don't think people want endless choice. I think people like to have the freedom to be able to express themselves, but I don't think when you give people a lot of choice, it makes them better off. I think it actually makes them more distressed and a lot more confused. And so I think the reason why we're seeing so many young people identifying within these LGBT labels is because a lot of these labels that have been created are now broad enough to cover straight people. Like I could identify as sapiosexual because I fit the description. I could identify as demisexual because I fit this description. I apparently can also identify as asexual because I fit the description. I could identify as that because there are labels within that community that perfectly describe me, even though I would describe myself as just a regular, degular, schmegular straight woman, because there is really nothing particularly special about me. I know there are tons of people just like me. These are all very, very normal things and very, very common things. We've decided to give them names, I guess, but that doesn't change the fact that these things have been existing since forever and have always been a thing, but we just didn't attribute them to sexuality. Like I said, I have no issue with giving things a label, although I do think we're kind of taking it overboard with the creation of new labels these days. I do think it's getting out of hand. So personally, I think we'd be better off creating less labels. But, I understand that this is something that adolescents just generally go through, and it's just kind of a part of the development process is to go through all these labels and be trying to figure out who you are, what your identity is. And so I completely understand why it's happening, especially with young girls, because I think that young girls go through this a lot more, and I'm not surprised that a lot of the people who I see discussing this are young women, because we are also more prone to social contagion, right? We're more prone to doing things because we see other people doing things or because our friends are doing it. This is something that's always been the case for young girls. Young girls have always been susceptible to social contagion. So I don't think that any of this is very surprising. And right now, this is what it's about. Before, when I was younger, it was... Now it's identity labels. In the next few years, it's going to be something different. It's just kind of the way we are, I guess. The issue with creating sexualities from social factors is, like I said, you'll have an infinite number of sexualities because there are an infinite number of social factors. So in the process, you are going to confuse a generation of young people because a lot of these overlap. Like I said, I fit perfectly into all of these. All of those sexualities that they describe me. So if I was a young person now trying to figure myself out and discover who I am, I would be very confused. I wouldn't know I would be like, oh, that's me. Oh, wait, no, that's me. Oh, wait, no, I would have no idea where I'm going or what's going on, to be entirely honest. At this point, people are creating sexualities out of pretty much anything. If you are a woman who only dates tall men, you can create a sexuality for that. If you're a man who's not attracted to big women, you can create a sexuality for that. If you're a woman who likes rich guys, you can create a sexuality for that. But that's the reality, isn't it? If people are creating sexualities from preferences and personality traits, you are inevitably going to have an infinite number of sexuality labels. How young minds that are still developing and trying to find themselves and discover who they are supposed to navigate that, I honestly have no idea. But that's just it for this video. I would be interested to know what your thoughts are. Do let me know in the comments what you think about the new sexuality labels and what your personal views are on this or on some of the videos that we saw. Let me know if you fit into any of those sexualities that they described as well. And I'd be very interested to see how many of those you fit into. Well, if you like this video, then you may as well like and subscribe. I am also on other social medias if you'd like to check me out, and I do also make music. Links to that will be in my description box down below. Thank you very, very much for giving me your time today, and I will see you in my next video.